welcome to this very special edition of Young Turks. I'm Shreen Bhan. As you know, the program has turned 22. It is India's longest-running show on startups and entrepreneurship, and perhaps the world's longest-running show on startups and entrepreneurship as well. Over the last 10 years, we've been trekking into the valley to see what makes news here, what the trends are, what the big shifts are, and what the valley is doing to capitalize on them. And we take back those learnings and link them back to the Indian startup ecosystem. We've got the largest community of first-generation startups in India on the Young Turks platform. So it's with great pleasure that we're here at the Celesta Capital office. So Shree, thanks very much for giving us the opportunity to bring all of these wonderful folks together. We've got a brilliant panel here with us, but we've also got some very special people with us here sitting in the audience. It's not very often that we have a Nobel laureate with us. So thank you very much to Dr. Jim Rothman for being here today. And as I said, the patron saint of the Indian diaspora, M.R. Rangaswamy, thanks very much for being here with us. So, you know, the buzzword, of course, is AI, the transformational power of AI, the opportunities that AI throws up, but also the challenges, the unintended consequences as we roll this out. Where is the early adoption? Are we moving past the pilot stages? All of those are going to be questions that our panel today is going to help answer. Let me introduce our panelists to you. Balan Ayyar, the CEO and founder of Percipient. What we do have in common is an Air Force connection, so I'm particularly happy that you're on the panel, Balan. Thanks very much. Shri Viswanathan, the founding partner at Celesta. Celesta and Young Turks go back several years. We've been doing events together, both here in the Valley as well as in Delhi. Sumit, thanks so much for joining us, the Chief Business Officer at Micron, and of course looking at the semiconductor story, not just here globally, but also now focusing on India. And Rajiv Khemani, the CEO and founder of Auradine, of course a serial entrepreneur. And there's a Stanford and an IIT connection that runs through this panel as well. So without further ado, Balan, let's start with the big picture view. As I said, everyone at this point in time is talking about AI, the impact of AI, what we need to do in terms of putting the guardrails as far as AI is concerned. As you look at where we are today in the AI journey, some are calling it the age of AI, the decade of AI, the century of AI. How are you reading what is going on today?
Well, first of all, thank you very much. It's a joy. There's a number of entrepreneurs that are in this space that would probably love to be here with the Celesta leadership and with these other great entrepreneurs. You know, from my perspective, I'm more tempered. I think these are great opportunities that are in front of us. There's some risks that we have to manage. I think there's a little bit of hype around the transformational power as it exists today. In the space that we occupy, we're working on accelerating understanding, which is not surprising given the power of the compute and the way that we're able to apply these neural networks to human decision-making in critical environments. So I am very optimistic about our ability to accelerate human understanding. I think what I would just say to the young entrepreneurs in India and here in America, too, that there's a little bit of, you know, kind of the Gartner hype curve, if you will, about the rate at which we can have this kind of adoption and transformation of human decision-making. And from my perspective, the human brain and the environments we train in are really the cosmos compared to what we're able to do in artificial intelligence now at the latest capabilities. And certainly our firm is demonstrating those in national security environments. And so I'm very excited and optimistic, but also very tempered. I think in the coming years, what you'll see is an acceleration of decision-making and understanding in decision-making that will really benefit humanity in all walks and ways of life. But it won't be the kind of massive disruption from my perspective that people are predicting that is just imminent. I think we'll see kind of gradual adoption of these different capabilities in various narrowly applied ways where we think the AI can help humans understand the values that are in tension. And I would just say as a last comment, I'm really interested obviously in my colleagues here. I think that it's appropriate for us to, even now, in the face of what we're hearing about LLMs and their ability to kind of bring knowledge to us kind of at our fingertips, I think being human has been more important now than ever. The consciousness and conscience that humans have to understand right and wrong. You know, not to tease my LLM partners, we work in the visual intelligence space, but, you know, these LLMs don't know the color blue, they don't understand gravity, they don't understand the values that are in tension in the most simple decisions that men and women make each day. And so this idea somehow that they're going to transplant or that humans will somehow be displaced, to me I think is a little bit premature. I do think, though, we should be excited about the application and our ability to help people really have a better understanding of their world and accelerate their understanding of the issues that are really they're facing. But the application of values and the understanding of those values and the consciousness that we have I think is going to reign supreme for some time.
Mm-hmm. Well, that's good to hear. Shreen, do you agree, and do you believe that there needs to be some tempering of expectations of when we could hit that inflection point? Because the assumption at this point is that we're already there.
Yeah. So I'd like to sort of draw an analogy to another major disruption that happened in our lifetimes, which is the creation of the internet itself in the early circa 2000s.
Yeah.
There was this distinct bright line between a company that was an internet company versus a company that was not. So if you remember, a lot of companies would say, I'm a .com, and some that are not. And I remember the founder of Intel, who I used to work for at that time, would say to me, remember, there will be a time when there will be no distinction between a company that's a .com and there's a company that's not. Every company will be an internet company. And I draw that parallel to AI because every company today and here on out will be an AI company. And so to me, there's lots of things to be excited about because the entire infrastructure that we've taken for granted over the last 25 years is going to change. And much like what happened during the .com, there'll be a whole bunch of companies that'll fail, and there'll be a company that'll be over $3 trillion, just like what happened today as NVIDIA becoming the most valuable company, which is largely because of AI. So but there'll be a lot of failures. So I think you have to take that in that context. We're going to enter into a changed reality. Everything is going to be about AI. While I agree with Balan, the human element of it is going to be an important element. We're in a completely different landscape at this point.
No, we are in a different landscape, and since you brought up 2000 and the parallel between what we're seeing happen today with AI and what happened with the internet in 2000 and NVIDIA, it takes me back to 2000 when Cisco was the most valued company in the world, and we're seeing that infrastructure boom sort of take over once again. Sumit, you want to weigh in on that and draw parallels between what happened then and what's happening now, and the crazy ride that we've seen companies like NVIDIA go through over the last few months.
Yeah, definitely. I mean, the AI boom has gotten a lot of excitement now, but we have been doing advancements in AI as a technology space for 30 years. And what has changed in the last short period of time is that what I like to call 4 exponentials coming together. We have had exponential growth in compute capability. Compute and memory working together has really created amazing capability today that didn't exist many years ago. We have had some step function changes in algorithms. Yeah. So you have had deep learning neural network algorithms that have then given way to this whole generative AI algorithms that started very recently and have taken on a whole life of its own. And you've had exponential growth in data, and so much data being available for these programs to learn on. And you've had connectivity across all kinds of devices. So you have all these billions of smartphones in the world, all these cars that are going to be connected, the internet, all of these Internet of Things. So a huge amount of data is being generated as a result of that connectivity. So when you have these 4 exponentials come together, some amazing magic happens. And what we are seeing with generative AI is one part of that magic. And this is going to allow us to do a lot of amazing things. For example, just understanding, for a computer program to be able to understand humans and understand language and understand and converse in an intelligent way with a human being has been something that we have been trying to do for decades. But now it has suddenly taken a step function and gotten to a level where it has accomplished a level of quote-unquote intelligence that is just shocking, right? And so there are certain things that those kinds of programs can do very well, but then it has deficiencies in a sort of a lot of other areas as well. And the focus of research going forward is going to be how to plug those deficiencies and how to create those true intelligence, right? And as was said earlier, understanding gravity and color and all of that to do that more than just, ingesting a lot of data, but to understand it and to be able to then reason with it. And that's the next step that is ahead of us.
Well, speaking of next steps, and thank you for putting the context together on some of the shifts that have helped us arrive at the point that we are at today. Rajiv, from your perspective, big picture as well as linking that to the micro, what you're attempting to do as far as your company is concerned, what is exciting to you today? But more importantly, what are the sweet spots that you're focused on specifically?
Yeah, well, first of all, thank you for having me on the show. We are focused on two areas, semiconductors and security, cybersecurity. Those are two big areas. And, just before I get into those, I echo some of the points. I'm actually more bullish on the impact of AI. But, AI, like most hot technologies, is something that you overestimate in the short run.
Yeah, and underestimate in the long term.
Underestimate in the long run, right? So I think AI actually, people draw this parallel to Cisco, and Chambers was talking about this today, where he said that he thinks this is different than that internet wave, because essentially the customers that are buying this technology, the infrastructure, are the big hyperscalers. The consumers have adopted it through chat interfaces faster than most other technologies in the past. But having said that, coming back to semiconductors and security, if you look at what's happening is that AI takes, even though there's a lot of advances in compute, it's not nearly enough where it needs to be, right? So it's consuming a lot of power, consuming a lot of water. And so the thing is that the cost of all of these AI models is very high. To train these models, only a few companies can do it in the world. And where we really want to get to is like a 10x, 100x from here over the next few years in terms of the infrastructure, performance, cost, power, and so forth. And it will happen, okay, both through algorithms as well as through semiconductor. And we are focused in making that happen. On the security side, there's actually very interesting things going on with AI where, that attackers, whether it's state actors or other bad actors, have access to AI now to attack you. Okay? There is this notion of IP, which is being rethought of completely, where these models can ingest your IP and effectively steal it. Right? And so there's a lot of problems that need to be solved, and we are working on those areas.
And that's an important point that you bring up, because there is now starting to be this sense of a trust deficit that exists between, companies like Adobe are dealing with that. For instance, they've put out multiple clarifications in terms of how they're training their models, what is being used as far as user data is concerned, infringement of IP, and these are going to be questions that corporations as well as governments will look at. But Balan, let's talk about from a government's perspective, and since you are focused on national security, sovereign AI, and that's going to be another big issue that governments will look at. It requires a lot of capital at this point in time. India, again, on the back of the digital public infrastructure that already has laid the foundation, is hoping to build on that. How do you see this playing itself out?
Well, as I said, I think it's just such an exciting time. I think India, like other nations, thinking about the power that's inherent in its data, its understanding of its own people, its understanding of the patterns that are unfolding in its country, and how it can address things like crisis, and how it can address and learn from things in health, for example, that maybe as a nation they have some responsibility for. So it's an exciting time, and the changes that we're talking about here will affect the way governments look at their data, their ability to have that data be learned from in America and then sold back to the nation whose data in which it was collected. I think these are issues that are going to be resolved both at the multinational level but also between nations. So it's important, I think, this future that we're talking about here does personalize in some ways an understanding of our digital selves, right? Where our data is, who owns our data. There's much deeper questions here in what AI allows that we haven't really resolved to this time, because you have either the computer or the algorithms to make all of the data about us really make us feel so vulnerable. So some big kind of existential questions about what our expectations are in a democracy, in a republic, about where our data is, what our digital self is, who has access to it, and how should it be used, hopefully for the greater good. And I think these nations are thinking about it from that perspective. But sovereign AI, I would just say briefly, it is true. I wish we all lived in the kind of countries that India and America represent to the world, where freedom and democracy, and as republics, as two great republics, there's a level of security that we enjoy that makes us think those values aren't at risk. And one of the ways that I'm most concerned about AI being used, one of our colleagues here mentioned it, Rajiv did, about adversaries. It is true they're operationalizing this AI against us in ways that put tension in our republics and create opportunities for dissension and a lack of shared purpose. So I think nations are going to take a very hard look at the way their data is being used, for what purposes. They're going to be looking at how nations and how multinational companies like the big cloud providers and others make money off of the data from their citizens. And I think there's going to be kind of a reconciliation almost that maybe lessens the concentration of wealth and concentration of technological prowess that our leading companies have. And I think you'll see some of that distributed across these nations as they start to develop approaches to AI and the value of the data that their nation is creating. And I think also, briefly, if we didn't think the world was one already, that this is going to bring us together in a way that makes us see the world's challenges more uniquely and more as kind of humankind and less as independent nations, but that's another subject.
Oh, it is, and that's a complex subject as well, because we are seeing different governments look at this issue differently. But, you know, Sumit, I want to address what we're seeing happen on the regulatory front as well as the legislative front. And there seems to be, for instance, in America as well as in India at this point in time, through the CHIPS Act in America and in India through the Semiconductor Mission, this need to sort of create an enabling facilitative environment to let industry grow in these jurisdictions specifically. How are you seeing that impact the growth of industry, both here in the US as well as in India, because you've now got a presence in India as well?
Sure, yeah, we're very excited about that investment in India. I think the advent of AI and what it means to semiconductor technology and the role of semiconductor technology in all of this has really been has come on the radar of a lot of governments around the world, and they have this desire to secure a supply chain in their country that can enable them to have access to this capability. And so there has been a lot of new programs created by different governments to incentivize manufacturing and development of semiconductor technology in their own country. And I think it's good in that it does help create diversification of supply chains for semiconductors around the world, which is an important positive, I think, for the world. But it obviously has to be managed well, because we obviously want to ensure that globally there is balance between supply and demand in the build-out.
Well, clearly you have less supply and enormous demand at this point in time, which is good news for people like you. But do you see that balance coming in anytime soon as we see more manufacturing coming on stream?
I think in the world of AI, certainly for memory, there is a dramatic change that has happened in terms of demand. There is a huge bottleneck between the processor and the memory, and it can be addressed with significantly increasing the bandwidth between them through products like HBM, high bandwidth memory, as well as dramatically expanding the capacity of DRAM in the system. So there has been a very significant increase in demand coming from AI servers. And Micron has been in a good position to really create the world's best high-performance, high-bandwidth memory with 30% lower power than the competitors. And so our capacity has been sold out through the end of next calendar year.
Very nice, subtle plug. Well done, that's well done. But, Rajiv, let's address the regulatory as well as the legislative aspects. When we've seen, for instance, as far as Bitcoins are concerned, now with the 11 ETFs coming in, again, a sort of validation that this is going to be something that's here to stay. How are you seeing these changes impact the industry?
Bitcoin and AI, obviously at different stages of their evolution. Bitcoin has, certainly in the last year, become a lot more mainstream with the ETFs. But not just with the ETFs. In the US, 50 million people own Bitcoin.
Yeah.
It's gotten to a point where more than 600 institutions own Bitcoin. It's become part of the presidential
campaign with the former president saying that he's going to ensure that it stays and is made in the U.S.
Made in the U.S. Right? Yeah. So I think it's a very different era here than maybe 1 or 2 years ago. And I think that there is going to be even more regulation to make sure that things can be done in more decentralized and more things can be done in the United States. So I think that is on the way to happening. With regard to AI, I think we are early, right? There are people who are super concerned about whether AGI is going to come and replace humans. I personally believe that's too far out, if at all. But I think that simple issues that exist where, is it when you're talking to somebody on a video call, is it a real person or their avatar you're talking to? Those problems are actually very near. They will happen in the next 1, 2, 3 years. And the rate at which these large language models are improving, it's like almost a step function every 2, 3 weeks that we see. And I think that there are a lot of problems to solve. So I think it's a great time for being an entrepreneur in the AI space because you can, you see all these problems and this creates a tremendous opportunity to solve them.
Sri, as an investor, is it a great time to be around, and what are the opportunities that you're looking at?
I was going to say, this is like, I fell asleep and woke up, and it's like the world is so beautiful because, it's like it's the old saying, let chaos reign, and then reign in the chaos. So I love these problems because as a deep tech investor, you want to solve hard problems, and everything that has been talked about here is fundamentally hard technical challenges. So the innovation that has to occur as Sumit said, in memory, in compute, in interconnect, in communications, in just the large language model. So if you were to frame this as the lower layer of the stack, in the technical stack, it's all the hardware infrastructure. And the middle layer is all the things that make the hardware visible to the applications that right on top.
Right.
And interestingly, we're trying to do the innovation in every one of these layers simultaneously.
That's an AI company calling you. His phone's buzzing.
It's like this next hot investment opportunity. It's that fast, right? But the point is that in each one of these layers, there are really hard problems to go solve. And so, as a capitalist, as a venture capitalist, we wake up and come to work. Not only because we want to improve our IRRs, every one of our investments, it's because these challenges are fundamental. These are fundamental scientific challenges. As you alluded to, Jim Rothman is here, the Nobel laureate, and he's actually advising one of our companies, which is really solving a key problem in drug discovery, and really looking at how do we actually apply AI or techniques out of what we learn in the semiconductor industry and apply it to, making our drugs more efficient, the discovery of the drugs more efficient, the delivery mechanisms more efficient. So AI, in the sense of looking at cool applications and creating avatars, as exciting as it is for consumers, this can fundamentally change people's lives. And, nothing better than that as an investor to look at these hard problems and be part of it as part of a, solution provider for that.